Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Data Analytics with Career Guidance course. Today, we are starting a new course that is SQL Server. Today is day one. In today's topic, we'll learn about the introduction and installation of the software. First, let's go here and understand what this SQL Server is. What does the database mean? Some of the terminologies. Before going to the topics, I just want a few things to discuss with you. Let me tell you. Let me open one more. Okay. And let's understand why we actually have to use database. Okay. Most of the people doesn't know why we should use database. What is a database? First, let's understand the concept of why there is something called as database. Okay. Let's start with very simple thing. First, what we have is data. All of you listen carefully. So what is data? Data is information. So what information? Information about, it can be anything, which we use it for further analysis or for keeping our historical information. For example, I am running an institute and I'm collecting all the information about my students. So once I collect the information, I can do a lot of analysis on that. Say from which qualification people are coming, whether they are professionals or freshers, whether they are students. I can collect so many information which actually helps me in analyzing the data. So this data is very important. That is, I'm collecting and keeping it somewhere. Imagine I can collect the information on a book. I can write everything, all the details, and I can keep it in a book. Usually, if you see before the computers came, so many of them actually used to write in a book so that all the informations are stored. So that is also a database. So we're just collecting the information. What happened once this computer started coming? People wanted to store all this as a soft copy. Now, when I say soft copy, that means everything has to be put that into system. That is, as a soft, say we enter all the data and we'll keep it somewhere. So for that, we started using something called as database. Now, collecting of the information, let's say I can collect that in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Notepad. We can do the collection in various different formats. But still, there is a way where we actually store the data. Let's imagine that in my system, I store the songs. So I'm very much interested in listening to songs. So what we do is, let's say I have 1000 songs. All those 1000 songs, if I'm keeping in a drive, and suppose I want to listen to one of my favorite songs, and I've not named it properly, it will become very difficult for me to go and play my favorite song because there are 1000 songs. Imagine I'll name all the songs. I'll categorize the entire songs either by the albums or the singers or movies or the year what it got released. And if I actually arrange that, it will become very easy for me to go to that particular song and then play it. Or even if it is not categorized, imagine that I have named it properly. I can go and search for the favorite song. So this is called as organizing of the data. So to do that, we need to have one place. So database is a place where we store the data. This is where we actually store the data. Data means it's an information. I'm actually storing the data in some containers that we call it as database. Now this database we need to maintain properly. Why should we maintain? It has to be organized. I told you. I took an example of songs. Now the songs has to be categorized properly. If you're not categorizing, it will become difficult for me to go and search for the particular song. So if I organize it according to my requirement, according to what I actually feel it easy to access the songs, that is where actually, making a proper structure of storing the data. So that is called as database. I'll store the data in a proper way. But we need to manage this. I have a folder. If I dump that, that is also a database. I type all the data in a notepad, roughly, I'll dump all the data. That is also a database. I'll put all the data, I'll just note in a book every details I'm writing it down. That is also a database. But if you write the details in a book, and if you want to search for a data, we'll go and keep on flipping the pages. So instead of that, I'm taking all the data and putting it into a system that is soft copies. That has to be managed. So that is called as database management. This is nothing but process of managing the data. So whatever data I have, I'm trying to manage it. When I say manage, it is like organizing. It is the process of making your data very easily accessible, very easily modifiable. Or suppose if I don't want any data, I need to delete. So to do all these actions, say for example, I want to extract the data, I want to modify the data, or suppose if you want to insert some data, or if you want to remove the unwanted data. So that is the process of managing the data. To manage this, we'll have a software that is called as database management system. This is nothing but software to manage the data. We can call it a software, application, tools, whatever you call. We also call it as DBMS. This DBMS is actually a software where it will help us in managing the data what we have stored in the database. Previously, the data was actually stored in one single table, a very big table, and we were actually storing the data, some duplicates data as well. That is because, say, for example, now people are there, you have actually entered some details. Say student 1 is actually taking one course this month and I'm entering all his details. The next month he'll come and he'll join for another course. So again, I have to enter all his details and then only changes the course what he is taking, that is a different course. Now what happens, there are a lot of duplicate records which are actually storing. So what happened? They plan to split the data into such a way that, say, I have a complete details about the student. Once he is entering the institute, all his details will be entered. Now I have one database only for student details. Then I have course details. Now what I'll do is I'll connect these two and get the data in another table. We call it as transition table. We'll talk about that in the next session. So I'll break my data into different tables and then try to create a relationship between them. That is called as relational database management system. That is called as RDBMS. The same software, but here we'll have tables, different tables and data by relation. So RDBMS, this is what now we have. MS Access, SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL. And there are more other database management system, that is softwares, which will help us in connecting with the tables. So you should understand this concept so that it will be easy for you to know why we are actually trying to learn the RDBMS, that is, in our case, it is SQL Server. Okay, so what we're now learning is about how we can manage the data in a very simple way. This course is all about how we can manage the data. When I say manage the data, that means we are trying to extract, that is select the data, modify the data, insert the data, and delete the data. So in RDBMS, we thought that we just learned that we are actually trying to learn how to manage the data. To manage this, we need to have a software. So that software, there is a language, the programming language, like what we have all this Java, C, C++ and all. For database also, there is a language. That language is called as SQL, Structured Query Language. So this language is same in all the SQL software. Now the softwares, the RDBMS, okay. Anyways, RDBMS, it will be using this SQL. So what I'm telling is the software which actually uses for managing the database, that is called as SQL. Now you can see SQL Server. It is nothing but the language what we use in server. This is also SQL, which is desktop application. Again, these two are also server application. So structured query language. In this, we again have further different languages that is called as DDL and DML. There are so many, but we'll concentrate on this. What is DDL? It is data definition language. What is DML? DML is nothing but data manipulation. So what is DDL? Suppose I want to store the data. Okay, if I want to store the data, then I need to have a table. Data definition language means you're trying to create database. Suppose already there is a database, that is, we have this one table to store the data. We need to alter it. Then I'll say alter. Suppose I don't want a table or a database, then I'll say drop. Definition means I have a table, or I don't have a table, then I need to store the data. I will create a table. If already there is a table, I need to modify the structure of the table. Then I can use data definition language. Dropping means I don't want a table, I'll delete the table. Next, DML. DML means manipulation. Suppose I already have a data. I need to extract the data. Then I'll be using this select. The command select. I want to select some data. I'm using this select. Next, suppose if you want to insert the data, I'll say insert. I can insert the data, the new data. Suppose I want to modify, then I'll say update. If you want to modify the existing data, then I'll say update. Suppose if you want to delete some unwanted data, then I'll say delete. So these are some of the commands which are very commonly used. In this, we have so many various different clauses, operators. There are so many different things what we'll be learning that we'll learn one by one. So today we'll just have a background of it, background of whatever we want to work on. We'll understand that, and then we'll see how to install this software. Now let me go to this slides. Let's get introduced to this SQL Server. So what is SQL Server? It is nothing but a database management system. Right. First, we'll see how to install, and then we'll learn about the SQL Server. So this is the system requirement, the minimal system requirement. You can go through this. Okay, I'm not so good technically to explain you about all these kind of specifications. I've just taken this from the SQL Server website itself, and I'm showing it to you. This is for 2019. Now we have this 2022 actually. Okay. Now all these are the system specifications, hardware specifications. What I prefer is if you have more than 2 GB, that will be more good for you, so that you can install it and the software runs much more faster. All right, so here I have a link where you can download the SQL Server. Okay, I'll be sending you this PPT so that you guys can actually install it. Let me click on this. When I click on this, it will open a website that is Microsoft SQL Server, where I can download. Here we have two versions. One is Developer and Express. Go for this Express. It is a free version. It's completely free. We can practice, but don't use this commercially. So we can download this. When I click on this, an exe will be downloaded. Okay, right. So here we have different, for different operating system. Just go here and download it depending on your operating system. So once you download, then you can install it. Now, once you install, see, this is what I've taken, the Express. So this is what you'll be getting, this SQL Server exe file. I think now you'll get this 2022 because that is the latest version. Once you have done this, once the installation is done, then to work on the SQL Server, we need to have this SSMS. What is SSMS? SQL Server Management Studio. Okay. So I have this link. If I click on this, directly it will take me to that exe file. So instead of that, what I'll do, I'll go to this website here. I'll say download SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, SSMS. Now this will take me to the website where I can download this SSMS. So what is this Management Studio? This is nothing but it is a view where it will give me the GUI of this SQL Server. It's opening. So there you'll have a link where I can download. It's taking time actually. Okay, just open that. It'll actually give me one. I don't know why it's not open. Let me see in Chrome. Okay. See, I'll get this download SSMS. I'm just clicking on this. It's taking a lot of time. Let it get open. I'll just show you. I don't know why this website is taking so much of time. So there you'll get one link where you can download the SQL Server Management Studio. Now it is some new version, some 2021, 19, I'm not sure. Okay, just download that and install it. Once you install that, you'll get something like this. Okay, so I have one previous version, that is I'm using this 2019. You go here, so you have this management system, that is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. Click on this. When I click on this, automatically there will be a server which is getting installed. It's opening. It will take some time actually. Okay, so this will be your server name. But otherwise, if you're in an organization, so you'll have a different server, because your entire SQL server will be connected to a server where the admin will actually help you in connecting it. As of now, I have installed in my system and my system itself will act as the server. Okay, if I say connect, then you can see this is the layout. So tomorrow in the next session, I'll explain about this in detail practically. So today we'll just have an introduction. Okay, right. So this is my SQL Server application. So here I'll be creating the database. I'll be creating the tables. Okay, so all this will be taught from tomorrow. That is practically how we can create the database, how we can create the tables, both in command wise as well as in GUI. That is directly in the management studio, because some people actually find it very difficult to write a program for write queries for creating the tables or extracting data or something. So now we have a lot of easy options where we can just use the GUI for creating the database and also for the tables. Okay, all right. Next, so once you have installed, then you can start working on it. Okay, for working on these things, how to import the data, how to start working on the queries, I'll tell you. I'll be giving you the data as well, so you can import that. I'll tell you how to import the data as well. Everything we'll learn from next session. Right. Now let's go and understand about the SQL Server. So whatever I told you on the notepad, that is data, database management system, all this, that is common for all the software, that is all the database management system. But specifically, if you want to understand SQL Server, SQL Server is actually a software which will help us in managing the data. It uses a language that is SQL. So what is SQL? Structured Query Language. So what is that actually helps us? It lets us to access and manipulate databases. So it is actually a easiest language. The SQL is a very easiest language. It is just like a normal English actually. Okay, so I'll be sending in this PPT. I don't want to go through all point by point so that you can easily understand, but we'll concentrate more on what is required from us. All right. So what does SQL do? So why do we actually use this SQL? So it execute queries, it retrieves the data, it inserts, it updates, it deletes, and it also helps us in creating the database. So all this I have mentioned, right? In the first this thing that is in the notepad itself. So I can actually store, we can create some stored procedure that is nothing but the functions, which will help us in running the queries multiple times. We can create views and we can set permissions for tables, procedures, and views. So all these are actually possible in SQL. Next, I was talking about RDBMS. I told you it's nothing but a relational database management system. So SQL Server is an RDBMS, that is a relational database management system. So what is relational database management system? I'll have different tables and I can connect each other and then I can get the data. So if you see, if you would have gone through this Power BI and Excel, there also we had this joins. So in the merge queries in Power BI, that is Power Query Editor, we had this merge wherein we saw this different joins, inner join, um, uh, right join, left join, outer join. So all this actually comes under this relational database management system. Okay. RDBS, RDBMS is the basis of SQL and for all the modern databases. So I've mentioned few databases, that is SQL Server, then Oracle, MySQL. I mentioned all this. So these are the some of the softwares, that some of the database softwares, that is RDBMS, that follows the RDBMS. The data in RDBMS is stored in database objects called tables, right? So all this I actually mentioned in a simple way. So those things I put it across with point by point. So what you do is just go through this. Okay, after I send you this PPT, we can just go through this one by one, because I'm not a person who actually use this PPT for explanation. So I'm just showing you this so that I'll not miss any points which I've already explained. So the same thing is there here, but it is point by point. Okay. So SQL Server is RDBMS. It is developed by Microsoft. It is also called as MS SQL Server. Usually we call it as SQL Server. Some people actually call it as SQL Server. Some people call it as SQL Server. All are same. So this SQL, some people call it as SQL as well. So there is nothing wrong in calling that. So some people call it as SQL, some people call it as SQL. So both are right. So we can work on GUI and command based software. So both I'll be teaching you. I told you GUI, that is Management Studio, what we'll be installing. That is GUI, where I can create the database, create the tables, not just by using this command, just directly also I can create. Okay. The key interface tool for SQL Server is SSMS. That's what I told the second time what we're installing. That is for Management Studio. That is nothing but the GUI. Okay. Which operates in both 32-bit and 64-bit environment. So both 32 and 64-bit operating system, that is the installation, whatever you have done, your operating system, go and check that. So whichever bit you have, so you can install it accordingly. It will run both in both the environments. All right, SQL Server, what is the use? Its main purpose is to build and maintain database. That is managing the data. And the data is stored in database. So we have to manage it. It uses to analyze the data using SQL Server analysis, SSAS. So we can do the analysis by using this SSAS. We can generate reports by using SSRS, and we have the ETL operations, that is SSIS. If you just think about ETL, then we have this Power Query Editor. Same thing, we have this ETL, that is SSIS. All right, next. Version history. You can just go through this. So we have, it actually started with the first version, that is in 1988 itself. Released the first database product named SQL Server version 1.0 in 1989. Then various different versions started coming. We have this 2000, then 2005, 2008, 12, 14, 16, 17, 19, and now it is 22. Actually, I'm not mentioned here. It is 22, the latest version. Okay. All right. Next, SQL Server editions. So we have two editions. That is, we have this developer and the Express. Okay. So here, this edition was released mainly for use in the non-production environment. That is database development and testing. Okay. It allows to build, test, and we can use it for demo purpose. Then we have this Express. It is used for small scale applications and database with the disk storage capacity up to 10 GB. So this is what we have, two different editions. So you can use this SQL Server Express. Okay. For commercial purpose, there are different editions, that is SQL Server Enterprise. Then we have this SQL Server Standard, SQL Server Web. Okay. So these are some of the editions which are actually paid. Okay. So this is for commercial purpose. Commercial purpose in the sense, suppose if you think you want to work on some projects, so you should actually, have some paid versions as well. But for practicing, please use this Express edition. That is more than enough for practicing and learning the entire SQL Server. Right. The next, the architecture. So what is architecture? How actually the SQL Server works? Say I have this SQL Server. I request. When I say request, it is nothing but the command what we actually give. Say I want to extract some data. When I say extract some data, I'll send a select command. So I'll say select data from a database. It'll request for the data. So here we'll have the SQL Server installed. This is the server. This is client. Okay. So here I've installed the software. This is my client. This is my server. So I'm requesting for the data. So the data is stored in table. So I'll say select. And there is a syntax where we can request for the data. So once I request the data, it will process, it will check if the table exists, if the data exists, it will check the data, and whatever we have requested for, again it will respond. That is, the server will respond back to the client so that we get the required data. Okay. All right. So we have the architecture here. You can just go through this. And this is the complete software architecture. That is how actually it works. It's a very in-depth of the architecture. You guys can go through this. Even I'm not so good. And I told you I'm not so good in hardware and these things. Just go through this. If you think that you can understand, you can understand, because I am just concentrating on the language. Okay, that is SQL Server. Whatever we have the command, so that I'll be teaching you. Okay. right? We have some tools here. That is, we have this SSIS, which is integration services. I just showed you SSIS, SSRS, SSAS, all this. So SSMS, that is what we'll be learning. That is what we'll be using for working on SQL language. That is all the commands. All right. So this is about the introduction. So whatever I've taught today is just an introduction. That's it. That is how to install and what SQL Server is, and also about what is the data, the database, and things like that. What I want all of you today, your task is to install the software. Okay, all of you, please install the software. It is freely available. Install it, get it ready. From tomorrow, we'll work on practicals. That is, I'll be showing you how actually you can start working on creating the database and creating the tables. For that, whatever necessary things are there, everything we'll discuss from tomorrow. Okay, right. So I will stop the recording. We still have some time. We can discuss about the other courses or anything, whatever you want to ask. I'll just stop the recording now, and then we can have some time, so 5-10 minutes discussion.